The teams are out for the All-Ireland hurling semi-final this weekend. Tipperary against Laois, Cork against Kilkenny. The first one, the big one that stands out for Tipperary, Alan Flynn, he's in cornerback instead of Sean O'Brien. And Ger Browne is midfield instead of Michael Breen, who of course had a tough time the last day against Limerick in the Munster final. So they've had a few weeks to prepare, and these are the main changes that are in there. The team from the start, it's Richie Hogan in goals. Cathal Barrett is back fit again, which is huge. He was a big loss in the Munster final. Not that Tip would have won it anyway. James Barry remains at full back as well, so he might be paired up against someone like Chad Wire. Alan Flynn corner back, good pace about him, good quick turn. He's a good man to win a 50-50 ball as well. Brendan Maher named wing back. Maybe he'll be full back from here on out. We'll have to wait to see. Park and Ronan Maher, the other half backs. Ger Browne, so he's back in. We haven't really seen much of him other than when he came on against Clare in the Munster Championship match in Cusack Park. Went on one big solo run, wound up and got himself blocked down. So I'd say there might have been a case of once bitten, twice shy in the meantime of throwing him in there. But maybe he's done enough in training. He certainly has speed. He certainly has talent. Noel McGrath still in midfield. More of a workhorse half-forward line this time with Dan McCormick and Niall O'Mara either side of Bubbles O'Dwyer. So, I mean, last time the half-forward line was cleaned out under puckouts, so now there's two workhorses there in Dan and Niall O'Mara, who starts for the first time since the Cork game in the opening round, albeit he came on against Limerick as well. Then the full forward line is Jason Ford, Seamus Callanan and John McGrath. Jake Morris is one to lose out. He played quite well during the week for the Tipperary under-20s against Waterford under-20s, so he might be sprung from the bench during this game. Laois, Eddie Brennan seems pretty happy what he had the last day. What stands out is Éanna Lyons is now named from the start, whereas he was a late replacement or a late named change the last day in place of Stephen Picky Maher, who seemed to have picked up an injury. Lyons did very well against Chris Crummy, won a couple of frees from puckouts as well, so he was very good. John Lennon is named midfield there, we can see, but he's probably going to play sweeper again like he did against Dublin. And the forward line's plenty of scores in it. Aaron Dunphy, Mark Kavanagh, Ian Lyons, Willie Dunphy all getting on the score sheet against Dublin last week. They are of course the rank outsiders. I think there's something like a 15-point handicap on this game, and chances are whatever team Tip put out was going to beat them. So Tip have made a couple of changes, the likes of Ger Browne, as I said, and Alan Flynn, who's been road tested a bit more. So I don't think Tip are going to learn anything from this game either way, because if they put in the team that got beaten so comprehensively in the Munster final, they're going to win this game without too much difficulty. If they did a whole host of changes, even more than what they've done, they'd probably win well anyway. But they need to try and learn a couple of things for the Wexford game coming down the tracks. And I know there was Dublin were caught last week, but apparently looking a game ahead. But I think Tipperary have the class to pull away, and they need to learn something about their team between now and Wexford. And if they do get over Wexford and ultimately ended up against Limerick as well, the team that played in the Munster final won't do. So they need to develop a couple of changes and kind of figure out, if we were against Aaron Gillane, Graham Mulcahy and Peter Casey, for example, as the full forward line again, how do we set up? Do we have a full back line that started in the Munster final? I wouldn't be too sure. Cork against Kilkenny is obviously the far juicier of the two games this weekend. We'll just have a look at the teams. Brian Cody's made plenty of changes. The one that stands out more than any is Richie Hogan coming back into the team. I see him there wearing the number 10 shirt. He's been out in the cold all season. He only came on in injury time of the Leinster final against Wexford. It was halfway through injury time, so that seemed very strange, and plenty of rumours about the relationship with Brian Cody. I suppose none of us know, we're not in the dressing room, but that's the chat. James Maher, Enda Morrissey and Alan Murphy, they're all out of the team. I don't think any of them played overly well in the Leinster final. Enda Morrissey certainly had a tough time on Rory O'Connor and was left on him for the whole game. For Kilkenny, Conor Browne comes in midfield, and I saw him in the league against Cork the first day out. Very good, and a couple of weeks ago I spoke with his clubmate James Stevens, or Owen Larkin I mean, and he was basically saying he thought he should be unleashed, and that was before the Leinster final. He's getting his chance now. Combative player from what I saw, good strong runner, likes to carry the ball, and he's a fairly physical player. Killian Buckley, who wasn't used at all the last day after previously having a tough time against Diarmuid O'Keefe in the Leinster round robin game, he's back into the team as well. So into that half back line of Paddy Deegan, Pádraig Walsh and Killian Buckley. So Conor Browne goes to midfield alongside Conor Fogarty. TJ Reid is named at number 11 as always. He could play at the wing or he could play in full forward. I mean, Colin Fennelly would probably be full forward, but with Richie Hogan there now as an option to play either wing forward or centre forward, it gives a bit more flexibility in the forward line because, for example, if Richie Hogan plays centre forward and he's standing off the centre back and picking points, then he has to be marked. And that means if TJ Reid moves into another position, he should have a bit more space because Cork can't just leave a man to hold the centre and not mark TJ Reid, or basically it's going to open up space somewhere or other. John Donnelly's in corner forward, and he's a good worker. I've always thought he's really good work rate and he's good hand. So I wonder then, will Sean O'Donoghue go on Adrian Mullen, who's been the star find for Kilkenny this year? Owen Cadigan seems an obvious matchup for Colin Fennelly and possibly has the option of going on TJ Reid if he moves into the full forward line, and Stephen MacDonald possibly on John Donnelly because size-wise he's a bit bigger than Sean O'Donoghue, would have more of the pace for Adrian Mullen. So those seem like the more obvious matchups for me. Niall O'Leary's out in the wing, having normally played in the corner. Darragh Fitzgibbon has gone back to midfield, having been centre forward against Westmeath, and of course a bit like Tip against Laois this weekend, you kind of feel like Cork scored 140 against Westmeath. It didn't matter what way they set up the team, they were going to win well and they weren't going to learn too much. Tim O'Mahony had played midfield against Westmeath, he drops out of the team altogether. And half forward line of Daniel Carney, who's back in, Conor Lehane and Luke Meade, and then also you've got Alan Cadigan, Patrick Corgan and Seamus Harnedy. Assuming they stay in there, that's an exceptional full forward line. So the three changes for Cork are Sean O'Donoghue, Luke Meade and Daniel Carney. They're in for Joyce, Tim O'Mahony and Shane Kingston. And Kingston, of course, coming off the bench has such pace that he's a huge weapon to have.